Hello everyone, so today I'll be talking about the difference between buying a computer in the present to buying one back in the 1980s to the 1990s. So one of the biggest differences would be in the price discrepancies. So one of the advantages of buying a computer back in the 1980s to 1990s was that you had very good customer service and you had on-site tech support as well, which was common back then. If you bought a computer from any major brand like IBM, Compaq, Apple, or AST or any of these large big companies, you would get great customer service and on-site repairs as well. So one of the disadvantages of buying a computer back in those days was that it was very expensive to buy a computer back then. It cost a lot of money. For example, a basic IBM PC 5150 back in 1981 cost about $1,565, and this was a computer that only came with a monitor, the desktop, and the keyboard. That's it. That's all it came with. So it was just a very basic computer. I think it came with a black and white monitor, a green and black monitor, I'm sorry. So a monochrome monitor, basically. It was an IBM XT. Not an XT, it was it had an Intel 8086 processor in it, which was about 4.77 megahertz, not gigahertz, but megahertz. And the inflation adjusted price was about $4,929.75 in today's money. So those were some of the differences. For modern computers, the main advantage would be very low costs in terms of if you want to buy a very basic computer, basically a computer that just has functionability to allow you to go on the internet, do some word processing and stuff like that. Check your emails, go shopping online. You could, if you know how to build computers yourself, you could build it for much less. So basically today you could buy a basic desktop or laptop computer for maybe about anywhere from maybe $500 to $800. And if you could build one yourself, you could probably build it under $500 or even less. And one of the disadvantages of buying modern computers is that if you buy a very basic computer, the quality may be very low. For example, laptops today, a basic laptop would last you anywhere from 1 to 2 years, and they would probably break because they don't really have good heating systems, so the CPU would overheat and expire quickly. And most regular users don't take care of their computers. They don't take the dust out of it and stuff like that. So dust builds up and CPU gets hot and it dies, basically. So the quality of modern computers, basic computers, is very low. And there's almost no customer service if you have a problem with them. That's one of one of the problems you have with buying a modern computer, even from a large company like Hewlett Packard or Dell. So if you call, they may have customer service number, but they're not going to send a technician to your house to repair your computer. You could call the tech support number and tell them what the problem is, and the tech that's on the other end on the telephone may try to diagnose it and have you take a part out of the computer or send the computer back and give your RMA number, and it will take you probably several weeks to get your computer back. So that's one of the bad things about modern computers, is that you don't get any support, or you get very little support. So below that you see a chart of year, model, price, inflation adjusted prices for computers. So as in 1981, you have the IBM PC 5150, costs about $1,565, and inflation adjusted price is $4,929.75. And 1983, you have the IBM XT, and this was a complete computer with a monitor, printer, keyboard, and hard drive. Hard drives were very rare back in those days, back in 1983. I think it came with a 10 megabyte hard drive, and the thing cost $7,545, and inflation adjusted price would be probably as much as a car, $19,692.45. And 1984, you had the Apple IIc with a, I think, monitor. I don't think it came with a color monitor. It came with a green and black monitor for about $1,295. Inflation adjusted price was $3,224.55, and you saw a lot of Apple IIcs and Apple IIes in elementary schools, in K1 to K12 schools back in the 1980s and early 1990s. These were very common because Apple would give discounts to schools to buy their computers. I had an Apple IIc. I think I got mine in 1986. It came with I got one with a color monitor and image writer 2 printer, dot matrix printer. And all that cost maybe about $1,500 or $1,600. I didn't buy it; my parents bought it for me. But it was quite a lot of money. In 1989, you had clone computers. You could buy a clone PC with a monitor and printer for about $2,499. Anywhere from maybe $2,000 to $3,000 back then. So that inflation adjusted price for the $2,499 one would be $5,247.90 in today's money. That's a lot of money. And this is just for a basic computer with VGA graphics, standard VGA. In 1994, you had the Gateway computer, and I think this one would come with a Pentium processor, maybe a 700 megabyte hard drive, keyboard, mouse, monitor. It was like a tower or something. It cost like $2,999, and inflation adjusted price is $5,248.25 today, and that's still a lot of money. And there's a big reason why computers became cheaper over time. The reason was that IBM's BIOS for their computers were reverse engineered and replicated. So this led to the birth of IBM clone compatible PCs, and they came in the market in the early 1980s. And you had all kinds of brands like Compaq, AST, Tandy, and you had in Europe you had a computer called the Amstrad. That was basically an IBM clone compatible computer, basically. And there were so many of these. Well, you didn't have a lot in the 1980s, but you started getting a lot of them as you went into the 1990s. You had a lot of clone computers, and this basically created a lot of a lot more competition and brought down the price of computers. But it contributed to that greatly, and this also allowed more parts makers and developers to make software and hardware for IBM based computers, and this basically made IBM compatible very popular, so definitely all the competition brought down the prices, but it also led to a lot of innovations as well. And IBM's, along with MS-DOS, became the standard hardware and software combination that dominated the PC world from that time, from the 1980s to the present. There were other formats like Atari computers, Commodore computers, Amiga, Spectrum, ZX, and these were all eventually swept aside by the early 1990s in the computer markets. I would say more like in the mid 1990s, they were probably all wiped out by then. So this ability to clone IBM hardware allowed more people to become vendors for computers, and that, like I said, contributed to more competition, which also brought down the prices because the supply increases, so the price would go down. Obviously, more computers in the marketplace, and these computers, clone computers, had very low prices compared to major brand computers like Compaq, IBM, Tandy, and others. They were pretty cheap. But the disadvantages of clone computers was that they usually had very little support for products. So you would have a lot of mom and pop computer shops open up, and they would build their own computers with parts, and I guess they would give you a 1-year warranty or something, parts and labor, so if anything broke they would fix your problems. But a lot of times these vendors will go out of business in a few years or even several months. They would just pop up and disappear, and just like that. That was a bad thing about it. But back in 1994, I bought I think it was a Pentium 100 megahertz computer. It was just a clone computer, I just bought it from some small shop for about I think it was maybe $900. It wasn't a lot of money, just a clone computer with some motherboard. I don't know. Maybe there was a lot of motherboard makers. So it's just they just slap it together with a motherboard, CPU, some RAM, put a hard drive in it, and they would give you some software, the operating system, of course. I think back then it was Windows 3.1 with DOS 6.22 or something. That's what I got for $800 or something. It was a pretty good price, but I didn't get a monitor for it. I didn't get a keyboard, but they did give me a mouse. I just used my old keyboard and my old monitor basically for that computer. And yeah, that's how it was like. But if you want to get a monitor and printer and everything else, even back in 1994 or 1995, it would cost you anywhere from maybe $1,300 to $1,600, even back then, because computer parts were pretty expensive back then. And you saw a decline in computer prices, sharp decline from starting in the 1990s, early 1990s, with all these computer vendors coming online and selling computers. Basically, today, it doesn't. I mean, that trend hasn't stopped. You have people who build computers today, but not as many because I don't because these big companies were able to make their baseline computers very cheap, you know. And back in the 1990s, laptops were quite expensive, laptops cost anywhere from maybe $3,000 to $5,000 back in even in the mid 1990s. If you want to get one with a color LCD screen, they were quite expensive. The laptops actually cost more than the desktops back in the 1980s and 1990s, but today that's quite the reverse now. If you want to get a high-end desktop, that will cost you more money now than a laptop. But however, a high-end laptop would cost more than a desktop, of course. But anyways, that's how it was. Like if you bought a computer back in the 1980s to 1990s. Thanks for watching by Ace 1000KS 1975, signing out.